I found a way my wife secretly transferred $250, $0 from our joint account to her sister, and then filed for divorce claiming I was abusing her. And now she's trying to steal the house and my retirement savings. I never thought I'd be one of those guys who finds out his wife's been cheating on him, and then everything just falls apart. Honestly, I thought I knew Sarah. The way she smiled, the way she acted like she loved me. We'd been married for 8 years and I always believed we had a good life. Or at least I thought we did. But all that changed in an instant, and the thing is, it all started with something so small, so seemingly innocent that I almost didn't notice the signs at first. It all came crashing down when I decided to check our joint bank account. Nothing unusual at first, usual bills, a few expenses I'd forgotten about. But then I saw the transfer. A suspicious $250, $0 gone from our shared savings to an account I didn't recognize. I stared at it, thinking maybe it was an error, but the transfer had gone through a week earlier. I double-checked the account. Details, and that's when I saw the name. It was her sister, and that's when the alarm bells started ringing in my head. I'd known Sarah for over a decade, and she's always been the type to hide her feelings, keep her secrets close. But this, transferring that kind of money to her sister, that was a new level of shady. I wasn't naive. I knew she'd been acting weird lately, secretive phone calls, late nights, and I caught her deleting messages on her phone more than once. But I never thought she'd go this far. I mean $250, $0. That's a lot of money, and I couldn't understand why she'd do it or where it was going. I started digging deeper. I pulled up her phone records, and sure enough, there were texts, flirty, suggestive messages with a guy named Mark. At first, I thought it was just innocent, maybe just friends talking. But then I saw the times, late at night when she thought I was asleep. I saw the way she'd lie about where she was, claiming she was at work or running errands, but her location wasn't matching up. She'd even told me she was going to a yoga class, but her phone pinged from a different part of town, somewhere she'd never mentioned. It was a shock, honestly. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. The woman I loved, the woman I built a life with, was cheating on me. And not just cheating, she was stealing from us, from our future, from everything we'd worked for. The betrayal cut deep. I felt angry, betrayed, and confused all at once. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? I'd always thought she was honest, loyal. Turns out I was wrong. I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I needed time to process everything first. I sat in silence for hours that night, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what this all meant. I kept asking myself if I missed signs, if I had been blind to her true nature. I wondered how long she'd been planning this, how much she had taken before I even realized. That money, $250, was supposed to be for our future, for the house, for retirement. Instead, she was funneling it into her sister's account, and I had no idea what she was promising in return. The next morning, I decided I couldn't let this go. I had to face her. When I confronted Sarah, she was dismissive at first, acting like I was overreacting. She told me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was accusing her without proof. But I had the proof. The bank statements, the texts, the transfer records. I laid everything out on the table, expecting her to break down or admit everything. Instead, she blinked, looked me straight in the eye, and lied through her teeth. She said she was helping her sister out, been having a tough time, she claimed. I didn't steal that money, I just lent her some. It's not a big deal. But I knew better. I knew that was just her story, her way of covering her tracks. The way she deflected, the way she gaslit me, made me realize she was a good liar. She was used to manipulating her way out of trouble, and she was good at it. That moment, I felt a mixture of rage and heartbreak. How could she betray me like this? Not just emotionally, but financially, destroying our savings, risking our house, our retirement. I'd always trusted her, but now I saw her for who she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for her own benefit. I was furious, but I also felt a sinking sadness. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. But love doesn't mean blind trust. It means respect, honesty, loyalty. And she had shattered all of that. That night I lay awake, trying to figure out what to do. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly lost. I couldn't believe I was in this situation. I never thought I'd be one of those guys who gets cheated on and robbed by his wife. But here I was, staring down the barrel of a nightmare. I knew I had to make a decision, whether to fight for the marriage or walk away. Either way, I couldn't let her get away with this, not without consequences. I was already planning my next move, knowing that this was just the beginning of a long, difficult road ahead. After that confrontation, everything felt different. The house, which once seemed like a symbol of stability and comfort, now felt like a prison. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Every time I looked at Sarah, I saw the lies behind her smile. The way she tried to act innocent, like she hadn't just stolen $250,000 from us, was infuriating. I decided I needed to gather more evidence, get my ducks in a row, and figure out exactly how deep her deception went. The more I dug, the more I found. I hired a private investigator just to confirm what I suspected. It didn't take long before he came back with pictures of her sneaking out late at night, sometimes to meet Mark, that guy she'd been texting. There were also pictures of her at some hotel, not far from where she said she was at a yoga class. I felt sick. That's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was an affair, and she was actively cheating on me with this Mark guy. Meanwhile, I kept watching the money transfer. I found out that she'd moved a significant chunk of the stolen money into a separate account she'd opened under a fake name. She was planning something. I was sure of it. I also discovered that she had been in contact with a divorce lawyer, probably planning to spin this whole thing so I'd be the bad guy. She was manipulative, no doubt about it. She told her sister she was just helping her out, but I knew better now. She was plotting her escape, and she wanted to take everything. Our house, my retirement savings, everything I'd worked for. I needed to act fast. That's when I started documenting everything, screenshots of her texts, bank statements, the investigator's photos. I also secretly hired a lawyer just to understand what my rights were. I didn't want her to get away with stealing everything. I was furious but also hurt. I'd never thought I'd be in this position, betrayed by someone I loved and trusted. I felt a deep sense of loss, not just for the money, but for the relationship I thought was real. One night, I decided to confront her again, this time with more evidence. I laid everything out on the table, proof of her affair, the transfer, the secret accounts. I told her I knew about her plans to divorce me, to take the house and my retirement savings. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started lying again, saying I was paranoid, that I was inventing things, that I was overreacting. She claimed Mark was just a friend, that the money was a loan to her sister, and that I was just jealous and insecure. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I could see through her lies. She started crying, trying to manipulate me, saying she loved me, that she was just stressed out, that she never meant for it to get this far. But I saw through her tears. It was all an act. She was trying to soften me up, to make me doubt what I knew to be true. I looked her in the eyes and told her I wasn't going to let her ruin everything we built. I told her I had enough evidence to take her to court, to freeze her assets, and to fight her for the house and my retirement. The shock on her face was almost satisfying. She thought she could lie her way out of this, but she was wrong. That's when I realized I had to prepare for the worst. If she was willing to steal that much money and cheat on me, she'd do anything to keep her freedom and her new life. I knew I had to protect myself and my future. I started making plans to get a divorce, to take legal action, and to make sure she couldn't walk away with everything. I didn't want her to get away with it, not without paying the price. The next few days were a whirlwind. I changed all the passwords, called a lawyer, and started the process of separating our finances. I also contacted the bank to freeze the accounts she'd opened without my knowledge. Meanwhile, she was still acting like everything was fine, putting on her fake smile and pretending she didn't know what I was talking about. But I saw the cracks. I saw her panic when she thought I wasn't watching. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize, someone capable of manipulation and betrayal on a scale I'd never imagined. I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we'd built? I kept asking myself if I should even try to save what was left or just walk away. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let her take everything. Without a fight, I had to protect myself, my assets, and my dignity. I couldn't just let her destroy my future, not without resistance. I was already planning my next move, knowing that the coming days would be critical in deciding whether I stayed or left. And so I waited, watching her every move, preparing for what I knew would be a difficult battle ahead. I'd never felt so betrayed, so furious, and yet so determined to stand my ground. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my life from someone who had lied and cheated her way into my world. I knew the fallout would be messy, but I was ready to face it. I just hoped I'd come out the other side with some sense of peace, and maybe, just maybe, a lesson learned about trust and betrayal. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm I couldn't see the end of. Every moment was tense, every decision critical. I kept revisiting all the evidence I'd gathered, trying to piece together exactly how deep her deception went. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how calculated her moves had been. She had planned this for months, maybe longer. The transfer of that $250, $0 wasn't just a random act of desperation. It was part of a bigger scheme to cut me out completely. I found out she opened a new bank account under a fake name, which she used to funnel money without my knowledge. She'd also been making secret deposits into his account, which explained where that large sum had gone. It was clear she intended to drain us dry, then leave with Mark and whatever she could grab. The thought sent a surge of rage through my veins. How could she be so cruel, so calculating? I'd always believed she loved me, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish woman willing to destroy everything for her own gain. I decided I needed legal help fast. I contacted a divorce lawyer who specialized in financial abuse and asset protection. I explained everything: her affair, the money transfer, the secret accounts, her plans to steal the house and retirement savings. The lawyer was cold but professional, telling me I had a case, especially with the evidence I presented. He warned me it wouldn't be easy. Sarah was a master at twisting stories, and she'd probably try to spin things her way, but I was determined. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything, not without a fight. Meanwhile, I kept a close eye on her. She started acting even more erratically, canceling plans, acting defensive, and trying to gaslight me into doubting what I knew. One evening, she burst into tears, claiming she was overwhelmed, that she didn't mean for it to get this bad. She begged me to forgive her, said she loved me and that she was just stressed out from work. I looked right into her eyes and told her I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I knew about the affair, the money, everything. Her face paled and she tried to deny everything, but I had the evidence. It was all there. That night I stayed up late, drafting a plan. I knew I had to act fast before she could do more damage. I contacted the bank and froze all her accounts, including the ones she'd opened secretly. I also started gathering all the documents I needed for the divorce and asset division. I wanted to ensure she couldn't just disappear with her new life and leave me holding the bag. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This was war, and I had to fight for what was mine. I also reached out to a financial advisor, someone who could help me protect what was left of my savings and future. I realized that her betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, and I had to be smart if I wanted to salvage what I could. She'd already spent or transferred a huge chunk of our money, but I knew there might still be some way to claw back what was stolen, or at least prevent her from taking more. The most shocking part came when I found out she'd already been talking to a divorce attorney behind my back. I found emails and texts where she was discussing how to spin her story, how to make me look like the bad guy, and how she planned to take the house in the settlement. That's when I knew she wasn't just cheating. She was actively trying to destroy me financially and emotionally. I felt a mixture of disgust and resolve. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I decided to confront her one last time before going fully nuclear. I told her I knew everything: the affair, the money, her plans to steal everything, and that I was filing for divorce. I told her she had no idea what I was prepared to do to protect myself and my future. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she spat back that I was overreacting, that I was paranoid, and that I was the one ruining everything. I just looked at her and said, "You've already ruined everything, you just don't see it yet." That was the moment I realized this wasn't about saving the marriage anymore. It was about saving myself from her. From that point on, I knew I had to be strategic. I was already documenting everything, working with my lawyer, and preparing for the inevitable legal battle. I also started talking to friends and family to get advice, to make sure I wasn't alone in this. The betrayal ran deep, but I refused to let her win. I was already planning to fight tooth and nail to keep what was mine, my house, my retirement, my dignity. I knew. This was only the beginning, but I was ready for whatever came next. I had to be, because I wasn't going to let her destroy everything I'd worked so hard for. The legal process moved quickly once I had all my evidence in order. I filed for divorce, citing her infidelity, financial misconduct, and emotional abuse. It was a messy, complicated situation. She was already trying to spin stories, claiming I was an abuser, that I'd been controlling and manipulative. She even went as far as filing a counterclaim, trying to accuse me of mistreatment to sway the judge. That was typical Sarah. She'd lie, twist the facts, and play the victim to get what she wanted. But I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, witness statements from the investigator, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. In the meantime, she continued her manipulative tactics. She tried to call me, text me, even show up at my workplace crying and begging for another chance. She claimed she was sorry, that she'd changed, that she'd never do it again. But I saw through her tears. I knew she was trying to soften me up to make me doubt my decision. I refused to be played. I told her I wasn't interested in her sob stories, that I had all the evidence I needed to prove her guilt. I also made sure to inform her that I was working with a lawyer to protect my assets, and that any attempt to steal the house or my retirement savings would be fought in court. The most intense part of this process was the discovery phase. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that she deserved a fair share of the assets, claiming I was controlling and abusive, but I had everything documented. The judge wasn't convinced by her lies. I think she underestimated how much I'd prepared, how organized I'd been. When the court saw the evidence of her affair, her secret accounts, the illegal transfer of funds, and her attempts to manipulate the situation, her case started to crumble. During this time, I also discovered she'd been secretly planning to move out of the house with and Mark, trying to cut me out entirely. She'd even contacted real estate agents, looking at properties in nearby towns. She was ready to run, to start a new life with her lover and her sister, leaving me with nothing. That realization made me even more determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. I didn't want her to walk away with the house, with my savings, and with the life we'd built, especially not after everything she'd done. One day, I got a call from my lawyer, an urgent one. The court had scheduled a hearing for the next week, and Sarah's lawyer was pushing hard to get a quick settlement. But I knew better. I knew she was trying to rush things so she could get her hands on the house before I could mount a proper defense. I told my lawyer to prepare for a full trial. I was ready to go all the way. I wanted the truth out there, and I wanted her to pay for what she'd done. In the meantime, I reached out to my bank and financial advisor again. I had the accounts frozen, but I also wanted to make sure she couldn't open new ones or transfer more money. I learned that she'd already transferred a significant amount of our savings into her sister's account, money I might never see again. That stung, but I refused to give up. I started looking into how to recover some of the stolen funds and protect what was left. I also hired a forensic accountant to help trace the money trail and see if I could recover what was lost. The emotional toll was almost unbearable. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. Every time I saw her fake tears or heard her lies, I wondered how I missed all the signs. How did I let someone I loved so deeply manipulate me so completely? But I also knew I couldn't let her ruin me emotionally. I had to stay strong for myself, for my future. I reminded myself that I had the truth on my side and that I was fighting not just for the house or the money, but for my dignity. As the court date approached, I felt a surge of determination. I'd come this far and I wasn't going to back down now. I prepared my testimony, organized my evidence, and made sure my lawyer was ready for the fight. I knew she'd try every trick in the book to sway the judge, more lies, more manipulation, but I was confident in what I had. I had the truth, and I was ready to tell it. I just hoped that in the end, justice would prevail and I'd be able to start rebuilding from this nightmare. The day of the hearing finally arrived. I walked into the courtroom feeling a mixture of anxiety and resolve. I knew the fight wasn't over yet, but I also knew I wasn't going to let her win. I looked at her sitting there trying to act innocent, and I thought about everything we'd been through. This wasn't just about money or the house anymore. It was about standing up for myself, about making sure that someone who betrayed and lied walk away with everything. I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that I had done everything I could to protect myself and my future. The courtroom was packed, but honestly, I barely noticed anyone else. My focus was on Sarah sitting across from me, her face trying to look innocent, her eyes darting around like she was trying to find a way out. I could feel my hands trembling slightly, but I kept my composure. This was it. All the evidence I'd collected, all the late nights working with my lawyer, all the sleepless nights worrying about losing everything, it was about to be put on display. The judge called the case and I took the stand first. I laid out everything. How Sarah had transferred the $250, $0 to her sister without telling me, how she'd been having an affair with Mark, how she'd been secretly planning to leave, taking the house and my retirement savings. I showed the bank statements, the texts, the investigators' photos. I explained how she'd been manipulating her way through this entire mess, trying to turn me into the bad guy. I was straightforward, fact-based, and as clear as I could be. I could see her lawyer trying to object, but I kept my voice steady and refused to be rattled. When Sarah took the stand, she tried her usual tactics, crying, claiming she was overwhelmed, that I was abusive, that she'd only done what she did out of desperation. She said she loved me, that she never meant to hurt me. But I wasn't buying her crocodile tears. I had proof of her affair, her lies, her money transfers, and her secret accounts. I pointed out inconsistencies in her story, showed the court her texts with Mark, and explained how she'd been planning her escape for months. I saw her falter under the weight of the evidence, her face flushing with anger and frustration. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, probing for details. It was clear that she saw through Sarah's manipulation, that she understood this was more than just a divorce. It was a case of financial betrayal and emotional abuse. I could feel a flicker of hope, knowing that I had a chance to finally get justice. But I also knew Sarah wouldn't give up easily. She'd fight dirty, lie even more, try to twist the narrative in her favor. That's why I stayed sharp, ready to counter every move she made. After both sides presented their case, the judge took a break to deliberate. During that time, I sat outside trying to catch my breath. My heart was pounding, part relief, part anxiety. I had done everything I could, laid out the facts, and made my case. But I knew the judge's decision wasn't guaranteed. Sarah's lawyer was a skilled manipulator, and I had no doubt she'd try to argue that I was an overbearing husband, that I didn't deserve the house or the savings. I just hoped the truth would prevail. When the judge finally returned, her verdict was clear. She ordered the immediate freeze of all Sarah's assets, including the accounts she'd opened illegally, and granted me full custody of the house. She also ordered Sarah to repay the stolen money, with penalties for any future attempts to transfer or hide assets. The judge emphasized that her actions constituted clear financial misconduct, and that her attempt to manipulate the court with lies would not be tolerated. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but also a deep exhaustion. The battle was over, but the war for my life and future was far from finished. As I left the courtroom, I couldn't help but reflect on everything I'd been through. I'd been betrayed by the woman I loved, had my trust shattered, and almost lost everything I'd worked for. But I also learned something important. The truth, no matter how painful, has a way of coming out. I'd fought for what was right, and I'd won. The road ahead would still be tough, dividing assets, rebuilding my life, and healing from the emotional scars. But I was determined to move forward, stronger and wiser. I realized that I had been naive to think love meant blind trust. It's about honesty, respect, and loyalty. When those are broken, everything else crumbles. But I also learned that standing up for yourself, fighting for your rights, and not letting someone manipulate and steal from you, those are the real lessons. I don't know what's next, but I do know I won't let anyone take away my dignity or my future again. That courtroom victory, at least for now, was a reminder that truth and justice can prevail, even in the darkest, most complicated situations. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. For years, I had believed in the life I built with Sarah, in the woman I thought loved me. But beneath that surface, she had been planning her escape, hiding her lies, stealing from us, and playing me for a fool. All the nights I spent feeling suspicious, all the quiet doubts, turns out I was right. She was cheating, lying, and outright stealing. I guess I'd been naive or maybe just too trusting. Either way, I learned the hard way that trust isn't something you give blindly. It's something you earn and protect fiercely. The aftermath wasn't easy. The house, which had once been a symbol of our shared dreams, was now I fought for it, not just because I wanted a roof over my head, but because it represented the life I had worked so hard to build. The court awarded it to me, but the emotional scars linger. Every room, every corner seemed haunted by memories of what once was and what could have been. I knew I'd have to rebuild to find a new way forward, but the process wasn't just about dividing assets. It was about reclaiming myself. The money she stole, those $250, $0, was a blow I still feel in my gut. I don't know if I'll ever recover all of it, but I do know I've learned a valuable lesson. No matter how much you love someone, you can't ignore the signs when they start to slip away. People can hide their true selves behind smiles and lies, and sometimes they're willing to destroy everything just to get what they want. I realized that I had to be more cautious, more guarded, but also more trusting in myself, trusting my instincts, my judgment. In the end, I found a strange sense of peace. I'd fought for my future, for my dignity, and I'd come out on the other side stronger. I've started rebuilding, focusing on my career, reconnecting with friends and family, and learning to trust again, but more carefully this time. I don't regret standing up for myself. If anything, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but better late than never. Looking back, I see how much I've grown from this nightmare. I've learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also teaches resilience. I've learned that honesty is everything, and that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours. The pain of losing the woman I loved still lingers, but I refuse to let it define me. I will rebuild my life piece by piece, with the knowledge that I can survive even the darkest storms. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, trust your gut. Don't ignore the red flags and don't let anyone manipulate or steal from you. Stand up for yourself. Fight for your future. And remember, the truth always has a way of coming out, no matter how deep the betrayal you have. The strength to recover and start over. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is your own dignity and peace. And I've learned that it's worth fighting for.